I know what you mean. R&B, that R&B feel.
R&B Fear. Welcome to another edition of Interruptions. I'm your host, Otis Smith. If you see my backdrop and the guy to the left of me, if you don't know who this is, then I'm sorry. You must be somebody young that was just born yesterday. This man has given us Show Me, Say
Yeah.
Amen, I'm for real. I'm talking about The Love Forever. I'm talking about Second Time Around. I'm talking about Forever in Love. I mean, he has a catalog that spans decades. I'm talking that the smooth, suave, watch this now, light skin when it was in.
Well, I light skinned it. There you go. There
There
you
you go.
go.
Hey man, I
I'm
got to
good
be
now.
biased. I got to be biased.
It's funny because I toyed around some back in some years ago with the idea of doing like a LSB tour, light skinned brothers tour. You know what I'm saying? Light skinned brothers tour.
I know you and the bars going out then. I
L got to
can
be there. Some other people, maybe Kenny Lattimore, stuff like that. That
tell.
that that would be fun. Albie, exactly,
Albie, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Y'all, hey, listen, man, your music has helped a lot of us guys out when we were smart. See, we were
hmm
smart enough to realize, look, I ain't got to say nothing. I'm gonna put Howard on. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
just don't need to say nothing stupid. That's all that
yeah,
needs.
yeah, yeah. You
I
just
don't
need
need
to just follow along. You know what I'm saying? And that was one of the things though about the music and stuff early on. When I first started recording and first
Mhm.
started, and then especially when I started writing. Because I was raised up in a house full of women, man. It was like
Okay.
my mom, four of my sisters, all my sisters are older than me, and it was just me and my dad that was, dealing with the testosterone around the house at that time, with everything else was, the ladies. And so but that made me look at, through the years, look at what I was writing about
Okay.
and what I was saying in my music. And one of the criteria that I would use was like, would my sisters be proud of this? Would my mother be proud of this? Where
Okay.
because I mean, this is I'm not saying I've been a prude or anything like that through okay, but it's like it was basically looking at what I was saying. Like I said, would my sisters be proud of this? Would my mom be proud of it? Would they be cool? Would it be something that's respectful? And I always thought of it as my as an artist, my responsibility is to get you to the bedroom door. Now I don't need to take you into the bedroom, because we all should be grown up enough to know what to do once we get in the
Right.
bedroom. So some cats, need a little help getting to that point, and that's why I take them.
Well, man, I just love being, I was born in 1971. So
hmm
I love being part of that generation because we were smart enough, like I said, to
hmm
realize that, hey, they putting it out there to the fact that I tell people this all the time, how is that, yeah, we listen to hip hop. You know what I'm saying?
hmm hmm
But when when you go pick up your lady or we go to meet with man R&B come in, man, we throw all that out because we know what type of time we're on now. We know,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Exactly. That's important. It's important to know where you are at the time that you're there.
yeah.
Definitely.
Let me ask you this: what? How much confidence did you have in '79, man, when the second time around came out? Because when I go back, man, and I look at you on America Bandstand, bro,
hmm
brother, let me tell you something, man. Wait, hold on, there it is.
Yeah.
You, Shalimar, you came out singing, man. I'm like, For me to hear how you got in the group, and
Hmm.
then to see once y'all started performing, I said, man, he
Hmm.
had some confidence. He came
Well,
out swinging.
well, I mean, the thing is that, hindsight is always 2020, of course,
Uh huh.
and but when you as I'm a foundation cat. I'm about a foundation. I ever since when I was a little kid back in Akron, and in my neighborhood in West Akron, I used to watch them when they would build houses. They build these houses, and they first dig the hole, for the basement, for the foundation of the
Right.
house, and they would take forever building that foundation, with the cement and the reinforced
Mm-hmm.
steel, all that kind of reinforced cement, whatever it was, and they take forever putting that house, that foundation together. And once the foundation was done, boom, 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 that house goes up there. The house is up. It don't take no time at all to build the house. But and if you built that foundation strong enough, you could tear that house down at some point and build a whole nother house on top of that foundation
Yeah.
because it's strong enough. And
Right.
that's what I've always felt like as far as like building. And even when I didn't know what I was doing, I was building up my skill, building up. I'm on stage every night from time I'm almost every night from the time I was 14 till and for forever. I've been a performing artist since I was 10 years old. So when there's a lot of people say one of the things that you have to really deal with as far as like getting yourself and doing what you want to do as far as your career is that you have to be in the right place at the right time,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So but there's another part to that saying, to that whole concept, that people forget about, and it's the most important part of it, and it's being in the right place at the right time and being prepared, you
Prepare.
know,
Yeah.
because you can be in the right place at the right time, and you ain't ready for showtime, man. And it's like, it's like, that opportunity can pass you up. So when I got the call
Mm-hmm.
from Jeffrey, who I met Jeffrey back at a couple years before at a place called Mavericks Flat down in the Crenshaw district here in LA.
Okay.
And Mavericks was like it was a club during the weekend, but during the week it was like upstairs were the offices and the rehearsal rooms and stuff. And
Okay.
John Daniels and his brother Alonzo Daniels used to put together show groups, top 40 show groups, and once the show groups were able to tour, all of their bookings and stuff were overseas. So I helped put together a group there called Beverly Hills, and then, we went, and every time we had a show that we wanted to try out, we would play Mavericks on the weekend. And
Okay.
all the Soul Train people used to come down there. You look out there, you would see, Fred Berry from,
Rerun.
What's Happening and all
Yeah.
that. And you see Ralph Johnson from Earth, Wind and Fire, Shaka Khan be out there. Richard Pryor used to hang there all the time. And even if you weren't somebody, you were at Mavericks, you wanted to be somebody. So it was a real critical audience that you had to be on top of the stuff. So that was building my skill, building my craft. And
Gotcha.
then once, and so that when it came down a couple years later that Jeffrey called me, I was ready to go in there and fall right into the whole situation. And like, and that's basically what we did.
Man, you lit it up. I mean, I was excuse me, I was watching because you had a joyfulness, singing those songs when y'all. I'm talking
Mhm.
about when you guys first came out. You had a just like
Mhm.
joy. You was happy, and you was letting the world see and hear your talent, And so that's
Mhm.
why that's
Mhm.
why I asked that question. But interesting what you said about the foundation, what people don't realize, and that's why I asked the question. You can't see the foundation.
Mhm.
You just know it's
Mhm. You
there.
can't see the problem.
but you know it's
Just
there.
know it's there.
So, like you said,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
wouldn't have had a good foundation, then you wouldn't have been ready for the moments that you've had in your life
yeah.
if you never had a good foundation.
Exactly. I think, but and to get philosophical, we want to get philosophical. I think you can have that type of concept and make that as your criteria as far as like your whole life is concerned, is to be prepared. Be prepared for what I mean, this is a gift of life, man. God has given us a gift of life, and it's up to us to live this thing and be prepared for anything that life is going to throw at you. And one of the ways for me is to make sure that my spiritual foundation is like intact, because man, without that, you can go here, you can go there, you can be tossed and turned all over the place.
Amen and doctrine. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's funny you say that because I just had a conversation with a gospel artist last week, and we were talking about that, and you kind of alluded to it with the whole foundation, and we were talking
Hmm.
about how sometimes all hell is breaking loose in your life, and
Hmm.
you're looking for God, and you're talking, and it seems like He's not answering.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I said, I saw a message by Dr. Miles Monroe, and
Hmm.
he said, if you think about when you were in school, the teacher never talked while you were taking the test.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
You had to already be prepared.
Yeah,
So when
that's a good analogy.
he said,
Yeah.
so when we're going through that storm, that test, and we trying to get like, God, where are you? And he's like, I've
Hmm.
already given you the answers. Did you
Yeah.
study to show
See, you
yourself
see,
approved?
yeah, a lot of times you hear God. Well, most times you hear God when things are quiet. You know what I'm saying? I
Yep.
remember I remember during the pandemic, during the shutdown,
Hmm.
when I built this house that I'm in, built it from the ground up, right? And one of the things that I wanted mostly wanted was this deck that I had them built right off of my master bedroom,
Okay.
so I can roll out of bed and take 5 to 6 steps, and I'm right out on this big deck,
Hmm.
looking at the mountains overlooking,
Okay.
the other cribs and stuff down the road, down the way. But every morning for over a year during the time that we were shut in,
Hmm.
so I spent every morning on that deck. It was me and the Lord, me and God. Every morning, I read from Genesis all the way through to Revelation. You know what I'm saying? In that during that the course of that year, and
Hmm.
during that time, there were so many times, man, when he'd tear me down and then he'd build me up. He'd tear me down and then he'd build me up, and I never cried so many tears as I cried that year or so, because of all the things that I was taking in, and all the the things that I was hearing from God. You know what I'm saying? And it was quiet time. It wasn't when everything was like going crazy.
Hmm.
It was quiet time. So that's really important.
I wanted to ask you this question, and because you're one of the few people who were on American Bandstand and Soul Train.
Oh yeah.
What is what
Yeah.
I've never had been able to ask an artist what was the difference on being like you're on American Bandstands and then you go to Soul Train or vice versa, or is there a difference?
Well, I mean, the audience was different, of course.
Right,
Like American Bandstand was basically predominantly a white audience,
right,
and but Soul Train was the joint, man. I mean, the American Bandstand was great too. Don't get me wrong; it was
right.
an honor, and the people were like perfect. It was
Mhm.
great, and it was a sign of going into another audience. Playing to another audience. But Soul Train, that was the thing, man. Because I used to watch Soul Train before I even left Akron. You know,
Wow.
And every Saturday, I was just like every other, black household and a lot of white households as well.
Hmm.
At noon on Saturday, we tuned in. We were right in front of the TV watching Soul Train. I used to see Jeffrey and Jody on there, but I never knew who they were, but I
Right.
used to see them on there dancing, and I said, "Oh man, they got great routines." But me and my band, we used to watch it, to see who was performing on there that week. Watch it for the girls, of course, because the girls were fine, you know what I'm saying? And so, like, but every Saturday we would be in front of the TV watching Soul Train, and then to come here. When I got here, I used to hang out at Soul Train
Right.
before at the tapings of Soul
Hmm.
Train before I even was with the group, before I was even with Shalimar, because my girl, who eventually became my first wife and mother of my two older daughters, um, she worked at the Soul Train Dance Studio, and then on the weekends that Soul Train would be taping, she
Hmm.
would go on there and dance. I never danced on Soul Train. I was never a Soul Train dancer. Never a Soul Train
I think I
dancer.
would have remembered that.
But like, but I used to hang out down there. I remember the first time I met Don Cornelius, right?
Okay.
I I was at the office at the Soul Train Dance Studios. It used to be over on Santa Monica and Fairfax up in West Hollywood
Okay.
and West LA rather. And so I was there one day, I was there the first time I ever met him. I was there picking up my lady, because she was
Mhm.
working there in the office and stuff. And so I went there to pick her up, and I'm sitting there waiting for her to get off from work. And Don comes walking in, right? And he looks at me like, I could tell what he was saying. Who is this little sitting in my office,
Yeah.
And so then, and there was a couple of times, about a few times, three or four times that I met him like that. And then when later on, about a year later or so, when I got with Shalimar, I
Right.
remember we had second time around out, and we were on, and we were doing Soul Train, and Don came up to me and said, "You never told me you could sing. You just sitting in my office. You never told me you could
You know
sing,
what was
right?" I
funny?
said,
That that
"Huh?
that what was funny was that interview. You guys were on because he remembered you, and then
Yeah."
of course Jeffrey and
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 Jody,
Jody
yeah.
being there. But it's just sometimes the way Don interviewed, he made it seem weird when it shouldn't seem because he, he said because I watched him. He said, "Well, what about?" He said, "What's going on with the song Second Time Around?" So Jody says, "Well, second time it's better second time around," and everybody was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
okay."
the second time around.
And so and then he said something to you, and I'm like, but I've seen so many interviews with Don. It's kind of that's just Don, and
Yeah.
he was like, "Yeah, so I heard you." He didn't say a baby. He didn't say a baby. He didn't. He used
Yeah,
another.
because Rainey, my ex-wife, my daughter's mom, Rainey,
Right.
her name is Rainey. Like that was his girl, not his girl, but that she worked in his office. So
Office.
like he was, he when I met him in the office the first time, he's looking at me. We're talking for a minute. He'll say, "Hey, Mr. Cornelius, blah blah blah." He's looking at me and he's looking at Rainey, like what, and then when we became pregnant, with
Right.
my first daughter, then he took on that fatherly role for him, for her rather. And so,
Yeah. It was.
it was
It.
it was it was it was cool. Don was a good guy. He was a good cat, and I learned so much from him. And I learned, sometimes I would see him just sitting
Mhm.
outside, like say outside the recording studio, and
Mhm.
he had this Rolls Royce Corniche with the convertible top and all that kind of stuff. He just be sitting out there, and I go out there and we start talking, and we would end up talking like 3 hours, and he's the one cat told me, he said, Howard. I don't claim to be 100% right all the time. He said, but I'm about 80% right. So, you can pretty much count on my 80%. I said, yeah, man, that's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, I love Don carved Mr. Cornelius carved a lane that for a long time everybody wanted to be on Soul Train, whether you were a
Mhm.
dancer, whether you were a performer, it's like I gotta get on Soul Train.
That was
You
the
get on
thing.
Soul Train, you felt
Yeah.
like you made it. You forget
Yeah.
doing anything else. And that came from him. So we we
Mhm.
we owe so much gratitude where he made a show, like you said, where the dancers also were the stars.
The stars.
I mean,
They were the
where
stars of the
where
show.
else you get a guy like my man Louis Ski, right? And
Hmm.
and now he's become a brilliant actor. But like it's crazy. Like
Yeah.
the dancers were the stars.
Yeah, yeah, definitely,
How
definitely. But it's funny how you look at, different things as far as especially as far as like the black households and stuff were concerned. I remember when Second Time Around was out and it was screaming up the charts, number one on in Billboard, number one across the board, running in R&R, everything. And I called my mom back in Akron, right? I called my mom. I said, Mom, Second Time Around just hit number one across the board and R&R, Billboard, everything. It's number one across the board. My mom says, that's good, baby. She said, but what is it in the jet? She said, I haven't seen it in the jet yet. What is it in jet?
I
Magazine? I'm
remember
like,
Jet.
and it wasn't on the jet. You remember Jet magazine
Yeah,
had the charts back there on the back of the
yeah.
magazine, but that's what black families looked at. As soon as I got off the phone with her, I called Edna Collison, who was head of promotion and stuff there and at Solar Records. I said, Edna, you got to get it in the Jet. I said, my mom ain't gonna believe it unless it's
Okay.
in Jet magazine. So,
You got me out. You got my mom out here thinking I'm wasting my time. You got to put that
yep,
thing in Jet.
he put it in the Jet. Billboard or Bill, what, R and who, I don't get nothing about. What is it in the Jet? Jet magazine.
How hard for you? How hard for you was it being a sex symbol? And where I'm going with that question is this. A lot of times you come in, you have success, the ladies loving you, and we men, we like I ain't picking a
Mhm.
litter. Yeah, I like all
Oh
right,
yeah. Hey,
but
hey, yeah.
but then it gets to a point where because of your vocals,
Mhm.
and you could sing a woman basically out of her panties, but she's really not there for you. She's not really
Yeah.
there for Howard. She don't know Howard. Did that
Hey.
become hard to where like it became like a burden as well?
Well, then it's funny that you say that because, I mean, like I said, I've been singing since I was 10 years old. I mean, professionally. My mom was a major gospel promoter in the Akron, Canton, Cleveland
Okay,
area. And
okay,
so like, she put together what she named the Hewett Singers. It was me, three of my sisters backed me up, and we had a bass player, guitar player, organ, and drummer. We were bad. We were serious. Like the Hewett Singers all over the Midwest and Chitlin Circuit up and down, the East Coast and stuff. And so like, even at 10, 11, 12 years old, man, 13 years old, you have those what I call you had those church groupies. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Yeah, the
yeah.
church groupies and like, oh, come here, baby. You sounded so good tonight and just hugging you. And I'm like 10, 11, 12 years old, all digging the whole thing. And I'm like, wow. this is nice, right? And then when I went into the R&B situation, when
Mm-hmm.
I was 14, 15 years old, I went into our R&B thing, and we had our groupies as far as that was concerned. Ladies that would follow my band, my R&B band back there was called Life. We spelled it Lyfe, right? So
Okay.
Life Jennings was one of the first brother to do that. We did that way back in the 70s, Lyfe, Life Band and Show. And so like we would, we had our groupies and the chicks that these specific chicks that would follow us around and like, and the whole thing. And then I came out here, put the show group together, and then went overseas for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had your your top 40 foreign groupies. You know what I'm saying? So you dealt with the groupies all the time. And then of course, once I joined Shalimar, and then second time around came out, you're right. I mean, it was just coming out the woodwork. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, I'm a man. I'm a man. I'm human. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? And so like, there were, but then after a couple of years, oldest man, is like it got to that point where, you had to think about it. You had to say, wait a minute, they don't know me, they don't like me, the same ones that are going to be screaming and yelling and screaming for me are going to be yelling and screaming for Bobby DeBarge and Switch when they come in, or Bobby Brown, from
Mm-hmm.
with New Edition. It's the same. They just know what they see on those album covers and what they read and write on magazine and all that kind of stuff. So like, at that point, it was at that point that I started kind of not dealing in that whole situation. There I was successful in, avoiding some of it. I wasn't successful in avoiding all of it. But,
Oh,
but like,
amen. Right.
yeah, and then do and then especially when you get to a situation where you do a song like Say Amen. You know what I mean? And Say Amen is very, very important. To me, it's not just a song. And by no means am I saying I'm a perfect, and I'm perfect in this way or that way or anyway. I fall flat on my face, sliding down the sidewalk, skinning everything up. But say amen, allows me to say, hey, I want to thank you, God, for giving me one more chance, raise my voice and sing your praise. And I get up, like Donnie, like Brother Donnie McClurkin used to say, we fall down, you know what I'm saying, but we get up. And like, so it's you have to really put those things in perspective, because some people have they tell the story about, getting caught up in drugs or caught up
Mm-hmm.
in alcohol or whatever. Well, women can be the same thing. Women can be the same drug, that will have you looking, certain places where you ain't supposed to be looking. You know what I'm saying? So
Especially
you have
today.
to figure, you have to figure out, you have to figure that whole thing out. Figure it out, put it in its perspective. I'm all about compartmentalizing. Sometimes I think I've learned the whole art of compartmentalizing sometimes to a fault, because you know I have no problem being able to put certain things in certain compartments, lock it up,
Mm-hmm.
and then I mean I got the key. If I want to deal with it, I can bring it down, deal with it anytime I want. But for the most part, there's certain things. I have three ex-wives. Each one of them have their own compartment. You know what I'm saying? And like, and as far as like when Shalimar, when it came time for me to do the solo situation,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I had to put Shalimar in its own compartment, have its own compartment, lock it up, mess around with it here and there. And when it's convenient and when it makes sense, bring it down and do some things with it. But, compartmentalizing is I've seen people with the simplest lives try to live that life without compartmentalizing things,
Mm-hmm.
and they it messes up all the time. You got to put things in this perspective.
Let me ask you a question. And I always like to make sure I explain the question where I'm going with it because on my show I'm not about mess. All right, I
Hmm.
don't. I
Hmm.
let other people. They can have that. They have
Yeah.
that. Interruptions ain't about that. You mentioned, having been married 3 times, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Did you do you believe or do you think, just looking back over it now, looking back, did the persona of Howard Hewitt, I'm talking about like the
Hmm.
artist,
Hmm.
kind of overshadow maybe like when I say overshadow your marriage, I mean in a sense of they know who you are, but sometimes once you start to get deep into marriage, like once the
Hmm.
honeymoon stage is, you got to do everyday life and all that.
Hmm.
But at the
Hmm.
same time, you're a recording artist, so
Hmm.
you do have to go to the
Hmm.
studio,
Hmm.
record. You do have to tour, you know. And at that time, the time that you came along, it was
Hmm.
always you're single, and then what's next? Get married,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you think maybe, because everybody's not supposed to be married? The
Hmm.
Bible
Hmm.
talks about having the gift of singleness, but I just know in a time I came along, time you came along, it was you single for a minute, and then like, all
Hmm.
right, you get married, right?
Then you get married. You get
Right.
married. It's like,
Do you look back on it and think maybe I mean, you love these women, but maybe just marriage wasn't really, you know, for you to do, you know?
well, those are things that you have to figure out as you go along as well. And
Right.
I think that being married saved me from a lot of stuff. Although, you still had to deal with certain things because sometimes that wedding ring didn't deter anybody. You know what
Mm-mm,
I'm saying? Because
mm-mm.
when the times that I was married, I always had my wedding ring on. Always wore my wedding ring. But that didn't detour, certain things. So, you have to figure out how to put those things in its perspective. I think that with like for instance, my youngest daughter's mom,
Mm-hmm.
right? She used to always say, she used she used to always say, you know, I get, everybody else, she said, everybody else gets the sexy, romantic Howard Hewitt. She said, I get the silly Howard Hewitt. The one that's like, because I like, she said, I get the silly Howard. Why do I get the silly Howard Hewitt? Everybody else gets all that romance and
Uh,
yeah, for the lover in you
yeah,
and you
yeah.
are the one, all that kind of stuff. And and she said, I get the silly Howard Hewitt, the one that's like, but I mean, I like to have fun and I like to act crazy at times
Right.
and all that romantic stuff. That's tiring, man. You can't
I was
be
about
like
to
that.
say you.
That's like you can't be like that all the time. It's like good gracious. He said, dude, are you crazy? You know what I'm saying? So, but you I think that marriage was I never say that any of my marriages were mistakes
Mhm.
because I had my first marriage, I had my two older daughters, Lakiva and Rainey. And
Mhm.
my second marriage, I had Christopher. We had Christopher, my son. Third marriage, we had my daughter, Anissa, my youngest daughter. And so those are my babies, you know what I'm saying? And I could never, because I used to always think about, and I think this is probably a statement for my therapist whenever I get one. It's like because I used to always think about back, when I was 19, 18, 19 years old, I would think about my kids. I made up my oldest daughter's name when I was 19 years old, right? I went to Kent State. I went to Kent State for about 2 semesters or so. And when
Mhm.
I was 19 and I stayed on campus and every or walked to my first class and I would walk past this hall called Kiva Hall, Kiva, right? And
Yeah.
I said, man, Kiva. I said, you put love on the front of that, love Kiva, that would be like cold-blooded, little girl's name, right? And my oldest daughter, my first daughter, when she
Uh,
was born, we named her Lakiva. Now, I never thought about a wife, Otis. So I think that's why I may not have done too good in that category. But I am an amazing dad. I'm a great dad. So
man, no, like I said, I just asked the question because a lot of times people always think that I had an aunt that got married, and before she
mm,
got married, she had been single for years, and it seemed like she got married just to say, "Okay, let me
that's
get,"
married.
because folks
Yeah.
keep thinking I can't get a man or whatever, and she
Mhm.
married that long. She married that long, and I said, I said it wasn't for you to be married.
Yeah. But see, also, there's a lot of people that you hear this story too, that they've lived together. They were together for 20 some years. They lived together for 15 years, and then they got married and only lasted 3 or 4 years or something like that. But they were together the whole time. But see, the way that I look at that is like, okay, if you look at it spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Then if I look at something spiritually, then like there's no need for the enemy to come against your relationship if you're not living, you know, if you haven't taken that relationship before God, in front of God. If you haven't taken that relationship in front of God, there's no reason why, no reason for the enemy to come up against you. Now, when you go and you say, okay, we're taking this before God and we're taking this before friends and family, and making a vow, to God,
Mm-hmm.
you know, once you do that, then you're actually going out there on the battlefield. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
You and
Never
your
thought
wife
about it like
are
that.
out there on the battlefield. Now, huh?
I said I never
Yep,
thought
yep,
about it. That's a
yeah, out on the
good.
battle.
That's a good point you just made.
Yeah. So when you go out on the battlefield, unless you put on that full armor protection, the helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, shield of faith, sandals of peace, the belt of truth, and pick up that sword of the word, you
Mm-hmm.
know, if you don't do that, then you're going out on the battlefield naked. You're going
Well, you're
out
gonna
there
lose
with
on the
no,
battlefield. You're gonna lose
yeah, yeah.
because
you,
everything you
you,
just mentioned, he told you to put these are the weapons.
yeah.
So
These
and if you ain't got your sword, the word, then you most definitely lose.
you're going out there and with nothing, no protection, no. The sword is the only offensive weapon that we
Mm-hmm.
have, but the rest of it is to shield off all that stuff that the enemy's gonna be coming at you with. He's gonna be coming, and he will come at you because one of his main things is to minimize marriage and that whole institution. So but you're right too, in a sense where some people really shouldn't be married. You know what I'm saying? And they should understand that. And a lot of times when you get married, there can be so many different reasons and so many different, I think that come into place. Like for a woman, a lot of times it's like, well, you're this age, you should be married by now, but who's to say that? Who's to say when
Well,
when that's supposed to
yeah,
be,
I was about to say
you know?
ain't no time when you supposed to be if you're supposed to be. Like you said,
Yeah.
preparation, timing is there, and the person probably single because you ain't prepared to be married yet. You've been
Because you
sitting.
ain't ready. You ain't ready.
You ain't been.
And
I
then
can't look. Can't help because you
yeah,
50. You 50 and just ain't ready.
like the Miles Monroe, the cat mentioned earlier was an amazing guy. God rest his soul. And I mean, so many things. He laid so much knowledge in my life.
Same here.
And one of the and that, huh?
I
Yep.
said, same here.
One of the things that he said,
Hmm.
yeah, one of the things that he said that was like, that stood out in my life too. He said, I was listening to him one time, and he said, if you don't know the true purpose of something,
Yeah,
then abuse is inevitable.
I saw that. That's
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I saw that one. I saw that one.
Yeah. If you don't know, if I don't know what the true purpose of this microphone is that's sitting here in
Hmm.
front of me, and I don't know what the true purpose is, I'm the only thing I know how to do is abuse it. You know what I mean? Because I don't know what the true purpose is. If you don't know the purpose of a woman is, you can do is abuse her physically, unfortunately, physically, mentally, spiritually,
Yeah,
verbally. You know what I'm saying? So that's the first thing that I think as a man that you have to start looking at before you even talk about getting married, because marriage is about, compromising. A lot of people don't know about compromise. If you don't know how to compromise, you can't be married. There's no way to be married. No way. You know, and you just look at the different things that you put, like I believe the Adam and Eve, one of the stories that we get from one of the situations that we get from the
hmm,
story of Adam and Eve is that, God put Adam in the Garden of Eden, and he had things for him to do. He had name the animals, the
hmm.
plants, or whatever, whatever it is he had for him to do. Once he did everything that God had for him to do, that's when he says, "It's not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helpmate." You know, and then the whole and all that kind of stuff. But like, the thing is that there's a lot of cats out there now looking for a woman, and they're not ready for a woman. They haven't done all the things that God has for them to do yet. And
Yeah,
we know there's exceptions to every rule, but we know, man, we're stupid. We're stupid. We do and say and take some stupid stances in our man thing. You know what
yeah.
I'm saying? And so, you have to learn. Like one of the things I had to learn when back in the day when I argued, my main objection of the argument was to win that argument by any means necessary.
Necessary. Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm with you. I'm with you. We here.
Yeah, yeah. Stick that knife in there and twist it and turn it and like turn it every which way when that argument was the main situation. But then you learn later on that those wins aren't really wins. You know, those they're things that you put in jeopardy as far as like your relationship and your whole situation. For for a man, the most important thing is respect. For a woman, the most important thing is security. And when we talk about security, we're talking about security all the way around. We're
All
talking
around.
about her being secure. Yeah, we're talking about her being secure that you are not going to stick that knife in there and twist it up and twist and turn it, because when you have a relationship, when you have a relationship, it's almost like giving somebody a razor and telling them this is exactly where you cut in
Mm.
order to wound me deeply. Here's a razor. Here's a razor. But you have to have that trust that your spouse, your woman, and for women, your man is not gonna ever use that razor to make those mortal wounds and stuff, because that's what they are. You
It's
know.
fun. It's funny. I'm glad we're having this conversation, man, because I told somebody it took me a while to learn that. Far as what you saying, and because I was trying to win the argument, but
Hmm.
one of the things you mentioned how that we're not taught as men is that you can't argue with her like you argue with your boys.
No, no,
Guys,
no.
we'll get confronted. We're not
Mm.
finna fight. We're just trying to get our point across, like you said,
Right,
to
right,
win the argument. But sometimes doing that, you've made her feel threatened,
right.
where
Not secure, not secure.
not secure, right? And then
Right.
we're thinking because we're men, like I say, oh, Howard, man, you still on that? Come on, man, let's go have a bit. You
Yeah,
can't do
yeah.
that with your woman. You be like,
Can't do that.
you be sitting
We,
there like, well, you said some things, I said some things, and
yeah.
you thinking that's the end of it. It's like, nah.
No, no. Mm-mm. It's crazy. We are so we're made up different. There's
Yeah,
never you're never gonna understand. There's some things, a lot of things that I will never understand why my woman thinks that way. I'll
right,
never understand why is she taking it this way or why is she taking it that way. The you'll never understand it, but one of the things that I think is important to put into place is that that doesn't mean that she's wrong. You
correct.
know what I'm saying? It just means that she sees things differently than you see things.
You see it.
And so like and with that, in a way, in so many different ways, that is such an advantageous thing to us as men. You know, we get on, but sometimes we get on that whole
Mm-hmm.
macho thing and like what but you got to look at okay because when you look at a woman this is another thing Miles Monroe said when I really think about it he said when you give a woman a house she'll make it into a home.
It
Yeah,
multiply.
if you give her a bag of groceries, she puts that thing and whips it up and offers and brings you a meal. When you give her your seed, when you give her your seed, she takes it within herself and blah, and then she returns a baby, a human being.
Yeah,
So, I mean, so what that's telling me is, well, what if I like sat down and told my woman my dreams and my aspirations and my goals in life, and my, what I want to do, where I want to be at a certain time, at a certain time, at a certain time. What if I gave her that? What would she come back with? It's almost like that AI now. You say, okay, what am I going to put in there? And what is AI going to come back with, with all these other things and this stuff? And so, like, that to me, that's the same concept as your woman. Now, as is a spiritual woman, it's got to be a spiritual
yeah,
woman now.
yeah. Oh yeah, you can't just give anybody anything. Nah,
Nah, nah, it's got to be a spiritual woman. It's got to what your spirituality, what it's an interesting, a whole interesting thing.
I got two more questions for you.
Hmm.
Because I don't try to go down a rabbit hole where I say, you know how some interviews like I got these other questions, and I like for it to flow like it just did, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
like real conversation. Uh, Talk to me about Handle Messiah's Soulful Celebration.
Mm.
What was that
Tell-
like? And let me tell you why I'm asking you this question. So, my old pastor was my former pastor, not old, but my former pastor. He was real good
Mhm.
friends with Mister the late great Daryl Coley. So
Okay, okay.
we had just started a church, and we were Daryl had came into town, and
Hmm.
he was talking about that recording. He was talking,
Hmm.
and he pulled out the tape. He didn't even have a CD. He just pulled out the tape.
Yeah.
And let me tell you the song he played. He didn't play you. He didn't play himself. He didn't play Take Six. He didn't play the Yellow Jackets or Stevie
Hmm.
Wonder. He went straight to Tevin Campbell. He
Heaven.
he
Whew.
said he said you gotta hear this. He said
Yeah.
this boy can sing. And so he
Yeah.
played I Know My Redeemers Live. And
Hmm.
we sat there and we was in the parking lot and heard the whole album. So now we're
Hmm.
itching like, man, when this drop? When this drop so I can go get the CD? When does this?
Hmm.
for you being there, the whole what was that project like for you to be a part of that?
Well, it was like, because I think my stuff I did with what I did with George, right? I did my stuff with George Duke on I think on that project as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. But it was like, I mean, George and I at that time we were just doing a bunch of stuff, a bunch
Okay.
of stuff, and I go over there, and just because all the whole bottom part of George's house when he was alive, he was up in the Hollywood Hills and had this big old house up there, and the whole bottom part of it was his studio, and
Okay.
and we would just go there and hang out. Cats would come and just stop by and we'd end up, working on stuff. And so like, but so when we started specifically, we started working on that. It was like another session. It was like another session, man. And I didn't hear everybody else's stuff until much later, until later on and stuff. Tevin's situation, Take Six thing, and that whole thing. And it was an amazing, amazing project to work on, just like everything else that we worked on. That was like a time of creativity, man, with me and Stanley Clark. Stanley,
Stanley
is
Bad
one.
Boy. Stanley
Yeah,
Bad Boy.
Stanley, boy, and the first tune we worked on was this tune called Heaven Sent. And Heaven Sent is like a huge standard, like especially overseas and here. I don't do it that often in I've been thinking about because every time I do something, people's like, "Why didn't you do Heaven Sent?" I was waiting for Heaven Sent. So like, but then he introduced me to George, and like I said, we all just started creating stuff together. Creating different projects, different songs, writing certain songs, different songs and stuff. We just had a good time. But working on the Handel's Messiah situation, you could tell it was going to be something that was going to be special, you know.
Yeah.
And oh, so hold on a second. Hold on a second. Okay. Oh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. We still here.
Can you see me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay, there we go. So yeah, so it was something that was going to be you could tell it was something that was going to be really special, really special.
Man, that thing there, I mean, playing from start to finish every song, and then when I got to
Hmm.
the take six with Stevie Wonder, and then this is when I said, man, people don't know Stevie vocals. I know you hear when Stevie sing on his own stuff, but man,
Hmm.
I was like, man, Stevie's sick.
Yeah.
I was like, Stevie need help. Stevie need help. I,
Stevie, yeah, Stevie, man, it's like, because I mean, I went through my whole back in the day when I was a kid. I went through my period of wanting to sound like Stevie, and
uh,
then wanting to sound like Donny Hathaway, and then wanting to sound like Marvin Gaye, But at a real early age, I was like 15, 16, 17 years old. I was like, the thing that makes these people unique is the fact that they are unique. When you hear Stevie, you know it's Stevie. When you hear Donnie, you know it's Donnie. Marvin, you know it's Marvin. So they made a niche for themselves vocally, and it's an identifiable niche. And that was my thing at that point when like I said, when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, that
mhm.
I said, at some point, I want somebody to say, man, I want to sound like Howard Hewitt. You know what I'm saying? And that's when I started taking all those influences and like, putting my stuff in there, putting me in there, and then creating something that is identifiable.
Let me tell you something. I put you in this category, and I've only heard two people, well, three people, you, BB Winans,
Mm,
and Gladys Knight.
okay.
Y'all sing like y'all can just sing on command, like no
Yeah.
warm up, no just. I'm just saying your presentation. Y'all just come off like You ain't got to do
Mm.
nothing. Just like you can get up 4 in the morning, just bam, let's get it. Like
Yeah.
it.
I wish that was the case.
Say
I
that's not the
wish
case.
that was the case.
Say that's not the
I
case.
I try not to open up my mouth, man, until like until like afternoon, after 12 noon or something like that. And as far as going in the studio, oh no. But I've done things where I had to do it early in the morning. I did the Tom Joyner show one time, a long time ago, when he used to do that 6 a.m. thing,
Yeah,
man. And
yeah, yeah.
it was crazy. But I did it. Praise God. I got through it. I remember I had to do this thing when people had his heart attack years ago.
Hmm.
There was a show that he and um, oh man, come on, the lady, it's terrible. My mind is like gone right now. But
I get it.
you know who she he sings a different a whole new world. Da, 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 da.
Is
No,
that
no.
is that
Come
Melba?
on now.
Is that Melba?
No, 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 no,
Not
no.
Melba Moore.
Uh, Come on, your listeners, they're out there. They're probably screaming it out, and
Oh,
because I just that's my girl. That's my girl. I love. We're like very good, but I had to do it. He couldn't do the show, so I had to do
okay.
the show with her, and it was in Vegas, and we had to do it at like 9 a.m. in the morning, man,
Woo!
and trying to hitting those notes that boy hit. Next time I saw him, I just like went up there and said, "Boy," I said, "Cuss you out right now," because because he was hitting those notes, man. I mean, full body, high, natural high, man. It was like crazy.
People was different
But
too. People was different.
yeah, people, man, this amazing, amazing vocals, man. I mean, that was one his song, something that you told me stayed in my head. You know, that was the song that I sang when I went over to Dick Griffey's house and I got the offer to join Shalimar, and
Right.
Dick says, "Well, sing something, sing."
That's
Yeah,
what you pulled.
yeah. Regina Bell, who I was
Regina,
trying to think
ah,
about. Yeah, yeah. And so and that was a song that I hit Feel the Fire, when I got the offer to join Shalimar.
yeah, people, man.
People was
People was different. My,
Amazing, amazing, amazing vocalist. We're so blessed to have lived in and live in the type of, especially back in the day. There'll never be another Prince. There'll never be another Michael Jackson.
nah,
You know, Yeah, I mean, you have like Earth, Wind and Fire, all that kind of stuff.
hallelujah.
You got Slave, Steve Arrington and all. I mean, we have lived in an era of talent that is just
Unmatched.
amazing. Yeah.
Unmatched because you guys were creating. See the difference between hip hop and R&B in that era was you guys were creating from thin air, where hip hop is
Hmm.
sampling
Yeah.
something that was already created to transform it.
Already cool.
But
Yeah.
for you as a songwriter as well, to there's nothing there, and then you put something on page, and
Yeah. Yeah.
your era was different also in songwriting because you
Hmm.
guys didn't always write to a beat. Sometimes you just had the melody in your head,
In your head.
the
Yeah.
writing, and then you would have to go get a band and
Hmm.
tell them what you're hearing. Like
Yeah. Yeah. It's
that is
crazy.
yeah,
It's like this tune I wrote called Enough, right? On the If Only album, right? One of the independent albums. And like I had the hook for Enough floating around in my head for 2 years before I actually did the song, before I got the piece of music that really complemented the song and fit and everything fit in, you know. But I would see people. I wouldn't tell it to a whole lot of different people because I didn't want nobody,
Mm.
taking my thing. But I knew I was in safe company. I'd say check this out. And I like the hook was like, was I there enough? Did we share enough? Were the times when we made love and then chilled in the tub enough? Is it fair enough to say that in the end, it really wasn't real enough? Did we feel enough? Is our commitment to honesty enough to say that enough is enough?
Oh, that's good.
Man, that was crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
you know and that floated around in my head for like 2 years, and then uh Mickey Howard's son, Brandon Howard,
Okay.
great producer. I've known him since he was 5 6 years old. He's like my next to oldest daughter's age now, about 44. And so, like, but he brought me this piece of music, man, and I said, it. That's it. I finished the verses and took it to George. George, that was one of the last songs that George and I worked on together.
Well, I wanna thank you for coming on the show. I want to bring you
Uh,
back, but I
uh,
got an idea. I'm gonna tell you the person who I want to bring you back. And I know you know her. Oh, I want to bring you back. Get past the holidays and everything, and
mhm.
I want to bring you back and pair you up with Patrice Rushen.
Oh man, yeah, that's my baby.
I,
She bad, boy.
I had her on
Patrice
back
is bad.
back in
Patrice is bad.
2020.
She's good.
We had to call it the
Yeah,
musical education of Patrice Rushen. She was
yeah,
she had a
yeah,
clinic
yeah.
of music teaching, and I would love to have both of you all on at the same time because that's what I do when I bring my guests on. I was
Yeah.
fortunate to have for Father's Day a couple of years ago. I had Will Downing, I had Lenny Williams,
Mhm.
and Najee.
Yeah, yeah, good. That's a good combination.
Just talking about
Lenny,
fatherhood.
Lenny is a good,
Yeah, just
yeah.
talking about
Lenny,
fatherhood.
Lenny boy. Yeah,
Oh man,
yeah. Lenny's good. Lenny's good cat. All those cats. Najee, everybody. Is good people. But Patrice, she does classes down at USC, and she's been trying to get me to commit to doing a class maybe once a week down there. But I'm just on the road so much. It's just I don't want to commit to it and not be able to fulfill that. But we'll figure it out at some
Well, that's
point.
gonna be the next one, figuring her schedule and your schedule, and I want to bring you guys on together. So thank you for
Great.
coming on the show, blessing us with your presence, man. I hope this was a different interview than you normally do, man.
It was great. It was great. Impromptu, great questions, man. Very good. I see what you mean about, I have, because a lot of people do those what I call bio interviews. They look on the bio, and then they get their questions from that rather than going and like researching, because there's so much more. A friend of mine used to tell me, he said, Howard, you got to look at things you got to look at them with your third eye. You got to listen with your third ear, because everything is happening between the lines. You know what I'm saying? Everything is happening between the lines. So, that's good. So you did a good job. That was cool,
I
Otis.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, we're waiting on the biopic now. You know that's what's next.
Oh yeah, biopic, and I'm working on my book too. So I'm working on it, putting stuff together, procrastinating, and then getting on it, and then procrastinating some more. So but I want to be able to tell my story. Because every time I see somebody else trying to tell my story, there's something that's not right.
Yeah, yeah. That's why you got to tell your own story.
That's why what?
No, I say that's why you got to tell your own story. You have to get
Yeah.
where it's coming from your vantage point view and everything. So let me know, man. If you do your own documentary, like if you do your own doc before you do your biopic,
Mhm.
just call me. Let me do
Mhm.
the doc. Let me be the interviewer to do the documentary. Let me.
Uh, cool, cool.
So keep doing what you're doing. Stay safe, stay blessed, man, and thank you
That I'll
for
do that
your
definitely.
time.
Did you see? You see? Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, yeah.
What was your question?
Yeah, you've seen the unsung episodes,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah, yeah. The one on Shalimar, and then they did one on me. There's a lot of information and stuff in there as well. It was good. It was good. Yeah.
Well, keep safe, man, and keep blessing us with the music and your wisdom and your canter, man. And
Oh man.
we'll be reaching back out to you for in the new year.
All right, man. Look forward to it. God bless you, man.
God bless you. Peace.